Can the Kamado Joe Jr. soapstone serve double duty as a pizza stone, or do you need to buy a standalone pizza stone like this 12-inch one from Big Green Egg for the Minimax? Let's find out. Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and today I want to find out if you need a dedicated pizza stone like this Big Green Egg Minimax that also fits the Joe Jr. It's about 12 inches in diameter versus the Kamado Joe soapstone, which is a little bit thicker, which I think will help dissipate some of that heat, but also a little bit smaller in diameter, so about 10 and a half, 11 inches in diameter, which I think in the Junior might be an advantage because it's going to allow more heat to come up top. Now, either of these are both good options. You do want a dedicated or a proper stone. If you saw my very first pizza video in the Kamado Joe Jr., I tried to use a Pampered Chef one that we had. I think it was about 12 inches or 13 inches in size. It was thinner and it couldn't stand up to the heat that the Joe Jr. can produce. So it exploded on me mid pizza cook. Now I've used the Minimax stone for probably about 7-8 years now, and I've never had an issue with one. In fact, I got another one when my brother-in-law took the old one, or you could have the soapstone. But I want to answer the question today, do you even need to get that dedicated stone, or is the soapstone being a little bit thicker and a little bit smaller in diameter turn out an amazing pizza pie on the Kamado Joe Jr.? So without further ado, let's build our fire. So while our fire is coming up to temperature, let me show you a couple of the setup options that we could go with along with what I'm going to do. So normally you could have your stock Kamado Joe deflector plate in, but when we drop this in, it's going to be sitting right on top of the fire and blocking some of that heat that we need to get up into our dome to do our temperature. So another option I've done before is we actually drop in our grid rack, drop in our deflector, drop in our cooking grid, like so. We now have a little bit of separation, and then we could put on our soapstone, and we have a bit of an air gap. But what I'm curious about, and I've actually never tried before, is just going the soapstone. It's a little bit thicker than the Big Green Egg pizza stone is, and I think it might be able to get to that perfect temperature and allow even more heat up top. So for the setup today, I'm going to skip the grid and the deflector and go straight for just the soapstone in the top position. So I have a nice gap here to the fire, along with a large area for airflow to come up, which is going to help our dome heat up. The soapstone you can see here is pretty clean. I probably could have given a bit more heat, but just to illustrate, this is my classic soapstone. By just turning the temperature up to about 600 degrees after a cook, maybe 20-30 minutes per side, flip it and scrub it with the grill brush, you can get it back to looking pretty much brand new. And if you're doing pizza, that's something you might want to consider, so that you don't have sort of cooked on steak or any whatever scallops or whatever you've done last on your soapstone to flavor your pizza crust. So I don't think that'll impact the flavor today. I've got most everything off from a high heat burn. So let's close our dome and remove our smokeware chimney cap, since we won't be needing that for today's pizza. So the game plan now is just to let our Joe Jr. come up to temperature. I'm going to wait till I see about 600-700 degrees. I mentioned I took off the smokeware chimney cap since I don't want to potentially damage the rubber gasket at really high nuclear temperatures like we'll achieve going for our pizza. And so I'm just going to use my stock daisy wheel. Once I see 600 to 700 degrees, we'll drop this on with the pedals all the way open, which is just going to help trap some of that heat and make sure we really heat soak the top of our dome so it acts like a bit of a broiler. I'll put a link down below for the pizza crust. I'm not going to be able to cover that today since we're really focusing on the soapstone and a different setup where we're not using that extra deflector to see if that turns out great pizza. But I'm using a Bobby Filet pizza recipe, which I've used in a couple other videos. So I'll link my Kamado Joe Dojo versus non-Dojo pizza, where I go through the complete process of how to make the pizza crust. But today we're just going to get to cooking and enjoying pizza and see if the soapstone can turn out a winner. So I'll rejoin you in a couple minutes when our grill's up to temperature and we're ready to get our first pie on the Joe Jr. Okay, our Junior is up over 600 degrees Fahrenheit. I can tell the dome is heat soaked by the amount of heat it's radiating as well as the dark color that it's turned. Let's check the surface temperature of our soapstone using my ThermoPen IR. So it's just around 500 degrees. So I'm gonna just cool that a little bit so that we get even doneness top and bottom by just using a wet dishcloth. Let's check again. Perfect. So that stone now will heat back up quickly. So I'm gonna slide on our first pizza here. It's on parchment paper, which I will remove after about 30 seconds. It'll release and then we'll continue cooking. Okay, we're about 30 seconds in. So I'm just gonna slide under our pizza, remove the parchment paper, and now I can work that directly on the stone for the rest of the time. Okay, it's been about 2 minutes. Let's check our pizza. That's looking good. Bottom is getting a little bit of leopard print. Top is looking broiled. I'm gonna get this off, do a couple slices. I'll rejoin you in a minute for a taste test. All right, our Joe Jr. soapstone pizza is done. I took the rest inside so it doesn't cool off too quick out here. I can already tell, looking from the bottom, that this is a little bit darker than what I'd want. So I think we were trying a little bit too much with the soapstone without the assistance of the deflector plate. That's the first time I've gone with just one stone. I think in hindsight, I'll go back to what I already know works great on the Junior, which is that double stone setup with an air gap. But nonetheless, soapstone still can cook a pizza, and I think equally as good of a pizza as you would get on a proper pizza stone. This is more just the pushing boundaries maybe a little too far on reducing the setup from 2 stones to 1 stone. But let's dig in and give this a taste test. Still tastes really good. So yeah, it tastes exactly like what it looks, which is it's cooked properly all the way through. The top is starting to broil, could use just a little bit more, but if I gave it a little bit more, that bottom would go from okay to burnt. And so we are right on that line where we couldn't quite get enough time on the top without overdoing the bottom, even though I cooled the soapstone using a rag and some water. So next time, same exact setup with the extra deflector, which will help keep that soapstone from getting super heated. But to answer the question, can the soapstone turn out an amazing pizza just like a pizza stone? Absolutely, I give that 2 thumbs up. Should you try and skip the double indirect setup where you have a deflector along with the soapstone or the big green pizza stone? No, I don't think that is worth doing because it gets just too hard to not superheat the stone, and that comes at the cost of overcooking the bottom and not quite getting enough time on top. Hope you really enjoyed this one. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for future videos. But that's it for today. I'm James from Smokin' Dead Barbecue signing off. And remember, don't be afraid, fire it up.